as most people who have even a superficial exposure or knowledge of Buddhism are aware, the core teachings of the historical Buddha, as they are described in the early writings within the Buddhist canon, namely the Pali canon, or teachings within the Pali language. Again, a core aspect of the teachings involves the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. In brief, the Four Noble Truths involve the following. First is the truth of dukkha, or suffering, or unsatisfactoriness. The notion that even if things are going well for us in this world, because of impermanence and the inevitability of change, at some point we're going to be faced with things in our life, events in our life that are unpleasant, unhappy, sources of grief and mourning, even to the extent that if we live long enough, we experience old age, sickness, and ultimately death. The second truth, though, is that the Buddha, as a good doctor, so to speak, after having made that diagnosis, indicates that there is a cause or an etiology of our suffering, and so the second truth has to do with the arising or origin of dukkha, which basically involves attachment or desire. To the extent that we want things to not change, it's inevitable that we will be more likely to suffer than if we were to accept the basic reality of impermanence and kind of go with the flow, as the Taoists would say. In terms of prognosis, the third noble truth is an optimistic one. The Buddha says that there is the potential for the cessation of dukkha, for the ending of this suffering, or at least of the aspects of it that we add on with our mental activities and worries and emotional reactions to things that happen to us. We can't totally eliminate, for example, the pain associated with an injury or an illness, but we can get a better handle on the ways in which we as human beings tend to exaggerate or enhance that discomfort through our own mental activities. And then fourth is the noble truth regarding the way leading to the cessation of dukkha, so that this is the prescription, that there is a way, there is a method for actualizing this more optimistic perspective regarding this sense of unsatisfactoriness that we are burdened with as human beings in this life. And that path is the Eightfold Path. So the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. Now I want to particularly focus on the fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Path. This is in some ways the middle path that the Buddha discovered was most fruitful, that path being one in between the tendencies toward self-deprivation and asceticism on the one hand, and overindulgence of our desires on the other. In brief, this Eightfold Path involves right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. We'll go over those, but first just to make the point that right, does not mean right in some kind of moralistic sense. Right means these are the wholesome, wise, skillful, ideal ways of dealing with these various aspects of our potential for transcending the suffering that otherwise would be more exacerbated as a function of not following this wholesome, wise, skillful, ideal path. So the first two elements, if you will, in the Eightfold Path involve wisdom. The first being right understanding. right understanding or right view involves developing insight in terms of the Four Noble Truths, for one thing. In other words, to understand that the dukkha, the arising of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. At another level, it's the understanding of things as they are. This means understanding things as without labels or names, sort of being able to have a perspective that transcends the limitations of language and concepts that causes us to frame our experience and perceptions in dualistic terms. There's a teacher called Sangharakshita. He calls this step the path of vision, the phase of initial spiritual insight and experience, something direct and immediate. So the second noble truth is right thought or resolve or intention. This involves, according to some authors, resolving to abstain from sensual desire, from ill will, and from harming others, and involves cultivating thoughts of love and nonviolence. So again, these two elements of the path, right understanding and right thought, are considered to be elements of wisdom. The next three aspects of the path represent ethical conduct and are pretty straightforward in their description, but not so easy to implement. Right speech is the abstaining from lying, divisive tale-bearing, harsh or abusive language, and idle chatter. It involves speaking the truth and using words that are friendly, meaningful, and useful. I think in the Great Courses series, the lecture on Buddhism interestingly indicated that, when he instructed his class to try to implement some of the ethical parameters associated with Buddhist beliefs and practices, that one of the hardest ones for them to do was to maintain control over their speech. And when you think about it, we all tend to perhaps from time to time say things that are not kind or helpful to other people. So this is an important one and requires a lot of discipline. Fourth aspect of the path is right action. These are your typical precept type elements, such as abstaining from taking life, from stealing, from sexual misconduct, or on a positive side, it means promoting moral, honorable, peaceful conduct, helping others to lead a peaceful and honorable life. And by the way, most of the content of what I'm sharing is from Rahula, R-A-H-U-L-A, and R.H. Robinson, if you want to look up source material on the Eightfold Path. But of course, again, almost any book you pick up on Buddhism is going to have some description of this path. The fifth element of the path, which is the third in the category of ethical conduct, is right livelihood, having to do with how we make our living, and involves abstention from occupations that harm living beings, living by a profession that is honorable, blameless, and innocent of harm to others. The sixth, seventh, and eighth, some describe as mental disciplines, the sixth being right effort, which is persistence in avoiding unskillful mental qualities and nurturing skillful ones, the energetic will to produce good and wholesome states of mind. Right mindfulness involves focusing on the body, on feelings, and on mind states, as well as on mental qualities. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who edited a fantastic book giving detailed translations, which he did, of elements of the Pali Canon from which these noble truths are derived, talks about right mindfulness as, quote, detached observation of what is happening within and around us in the present moment. If we could do that, we would be well on our way toward an enlightened state of mind. And then finally, the eighth element of the path, right concentration, which is perceiving causal patterns, understanding how unskillful mental qualities may be undercut, and acting on this understanding. This is also sometimes known as right meditation. So again, these elements of the path are to be developed more or less simultaneously. Each helps with the cultivation of the others, and it's a way of life really to be practiced and followed by those striving to live according to the guidance of the historical Buddha. The bottom line is that this is a path to the realization of ultimate reality, complete freedom, happiness, and peace.